I'm a photographer by trade and passion. Been one for almost 10 years now. Worked my way up from shooting small events with cheap gear to landing contracts with major brands. It took me years to build up my collection of camera equipment. Each lens, each body, each accessory representing months of saving and countless hours of work. My home office in my condo was my sanctuary, with all my equipment organized just the way I liked it. That's why coming home that Sunday evening last year felt like being punched in the gut. I'd been away for the weekend at a friend's wedding, taking photos as a gift to them. The moment I opened my front door, I knew something was wrong. The air felt different. Then I saw it. Everything was trashed. Drawers pulled out, furniture overturned, belongings scattered everywhere. My camera gear gone. About $18,000 worth of equipment I'd spent years collecting. They also took my laptop, iPad, and various other electronics. I felt sick. Those weren't just possessions, they were tools of my livelihood. I called the police immediately. An officer showed up, took notes, and promised the detective would be in touch. Later, I learned my neighbor's unit had also been broken into. They stole his computer and, more importantly, his car keys and car. My keys were stolen too, but I drive a manual transmission, which probably saved my vehicle from being taken. Thieves these days can't drive stick, I guess. The next day was frustrating. I kept calling the police station trying to reach the detective assigned to my case, but I couldn't get anyone to take this seriously. Then around 10 p.m., I got a notification on my phone that made my heart race. My laptop had connected to the internet. The tracking software I had installed was working. I quickly checked the location. A hotel just half a mile from my condo. These weren't exactly criminal masterminds. I rode my bike down to the hotel, hoping the desk clerk might help me. I politely explained my situation to the desk clerk, telling him about my stolen laptop and how it was currently showing up at this hotel. I asked if he could tell me which room it might be in. The clerk apologized but said he couldn't give out that information due to hotel policy. I tried to appeal to his sympathy by explaining that the police weren't responding quickly and this was my chance to recover my property, but he remained steadfast in following protocol. Though he seemed genuinely sorry, he couldn't help. When I was leaving the hotel frustrated, I spotted something in the parking lot that made me stop in my tracks. My neighbor's stolen car just sitting there on the street. I immediately called him, and then we called the police and American Automobile Association. When my neighbor arrived, he asked incredulously if the thieves were really staying at this hotel with his car parked right outside. I confirmed this was the case and mentioned that my laptop's tracking also placed them here. He shook his head and remarked that these might be the dumbest thieves ever. We ended up stealing the car back and having it towed to another location in the neighborhood. My neighbor knew he'd need to rekey the car since the thieves still had his keys, but at least he had his vehicle back. When the police finally arrived, I tried to convince them to confront the thieves in the hotel. I explained that my laptop was literally pinging from one of the rooms and asked if they could knock on the door. The officer explained that without a warrant or backup, they couldn't just knock on doors, especially since we didn't know exactly which room the thieves were in. I expressed my frustration, pointing out that I had proof they had my stolen property, but the officer sympathetically explained they had to follow proper procedures regardless. The next morning, I woke up early and called the detective again. Miraculously, he answered. He mentioned he had just arrived at work and my file was on his desk. I explained that my laptop was still at the hotel and asked his opinion on my plan to go there and wait for the thieves to leave so I could confront them. The detective strongly advised against this, calling it a terrible idea and warning me not to confront potential criminals as it could be extremely dangerous. So naturally, that's exactly what I did. I figured if I forced their hand, the police would have to take action. The detective must have realized I was serious because he and his partner agreed to meet me at the hotel. As I was introducing myself to the detectives in the lobby, three young men walked past us. One of them was wearing my backpack. I excitedly pointed this out to the detectives, practically shouting that the guy walking by was wearing my stolen backpack. The detectives quickly detained the three guys and found my laptop, my iPad, another laptop they must have stolen from someone else, and a set of keys. I was ecstatic. The detective explained that while they could detain the suspects based on the stolen property they were carrying, they still needed a warrant to search their hotel room. I expressed my frustration that we knew they likely had more stolen items in the room, but the detective patiently explained they had to follow proper legal procedures regardless. They knocked on the hotel room door but didn't enter. It was frustrating, but at least I had recovered some of my belongings. My insurance ended up covering the rest of my losses. Here's where it gets good. Only one of the guys was actually carrying stolen property, so he was the only one charged. He faced a massive receiving stolen property charge and eventually pleaded out to a year in jail. At his sentencing hearing, I gave a victim impact statement that I made sure would hurt. I described how since the break-in, I hadn't felt safe in my own home and would wake up at the slightest noise, convinced someone was breaking in again. I explained how my insurance company had to pay out thousands of dollars, and I've been forced to install an expensive security system just to feel somewhat secure. I emphasized that this wasn't just about stolen property, it was an invasion of my personal space and my sense of security. The whole time I was speaking, the thief was staring daggers at me. I later found out from the detective that during his interrogation, he was absolutely furious and completely confused about how he got caught. Apparently, in his mind, using a stolen laptop at a hotel half a mile from the crime scene while parking a stolen car right outside was a foolproof plan. I made sure to explain exactly how he got caught to the entire courtroom. I even gave an interview to a local newspaper, making sure that whenever anyone Googles his distinctive name, this story comes up first. The court granted me a protection order against him. He's scheduled to be released soon, but with my new security system that he had to pay for through court-ordered restitution, I'm not worried. Plus, that felony on his record will follow him for years. About 5 years ago, I was desperate for a career change. I had been working at the retail store for nearly 7 years, and the constant pressure from management combined with difficult customers had left me completely burnt out. My degree in business administration was gathering dust, and I knew I needed to make a change before I lost all motivation. When I saw an opening at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown, I jumped at the opportunity. The position offered better pay, regular hours, and most importantly, a chance to use my degree. I polished my resume, practiced interview questions for days, and even bought a new suit for the occasion. On the day of the interview, I arrived 30 minutes early. Walking into a waiting room with about 6 other applicants. Everyone seemed just as nervous as I was, but we all tried to make small talk to ease the tension. The secretary at the front desk was friendly but clearly new to her role. She apologized about still getting used to the phone system and mentioned she had only been working there for 2 weeks. One of the applicants reassured her, sharing a story about how it had taken him a month to figure out the copy machine at his first office job. We all laughed, and the atmosphere became more relaxed. That is, until he walked in. This guy strode through the door like he owned the place. Designer suit, slicked back hair, and a smug expression that made my skin crawl. He didn't even acknowledge the rest of us as he walked straight to the secretary's desk. The entitled person announced he was there for the 2 p.m. interview. When the secretary politely asked for his name, he rudely told her to check her list. He demanded to be seen next because he claimed to have another appointment across town at 3:30. The secretary looked flustered as she checked her computer. She apologetically explained that there were several people ahead of him and that the boss was conducting the interviews in the scheduled order. His face instantly hardened. He insulted the secretary, suggesting she must be either new or stupid. He declared that he didn't have time to wait around with these people and ordered her to mark him as next in line. The entire room went silent. The secretary tried again to explain that she couldn't change the order, beginning to mention how particular the boss was about the schedule. But the entitled person cut her off with a threat. He proclaimed that he would soon be working there and would hate for his first recommendation to be firing the incompetent front desk girl. He warned her to put him next, or he'd make sure she was cleaning out her desk by the end of the week. My jaw dropped. The other applicants and I exchanged shocked looks, but none of us knew what to say. The secretary looked like she might cry at any moment. Just then, the boss's office door opened. He emerged with a woman who had just finished her interview. After thanking her and shaking her hand, the boss surprisingly called out the entitled guy's name, even though the secretary hadn't communicated with him at all. The entitled person smirked at the secretary before following the boss into his office. Once they were gone, the waiting room remained uncomfortably quiet. The secretary was visibly upset, fighting back tears as she tried to focus on her computer screen. One of the applicants suggested that she should tell her boss what that jerk had said to her. Another applicant offered support, noting that we all had heard the exchange and would back her up. The secretary was about to respond when she looked down at something on her desk. Suddenly, her expression changed, and a small smile appeared on her face. She assured us that she was fine and told us not to worry about it. We were confused but didn't push the issue. The secretary returned to her work, occasionally looking at her computer with an enigmatic smile. Almost an hour later, the office door opened again. The entitled guy emerged looking completely shell-shocked. His face was pale and he seemed unable to make eye contact with anyone. Without saying a word, he hurried out of the office. The boss called in the next few candidates. When it was finally my turn, I went through the standard interview questions. At the end, I couldn't contain my curiosity. I politely asked the boss about what had happened with the other applicant, the one who had left looking like he'd seen a ghost. The boss leaned back in his chair and smiled. He explained that since his secretary was still getting used to their phone system, they had come up with a temporary solution. During interviews, they kept the line open between their desks, with his end muted so candidates couldn't hear. He would turn down the speaker volume, but could turn it up if he needed to ask her something. He paused, looking a bit angry even in retrospect. He continued by revealing that during the previous interview, he had needed some information from her. When he turned off the volume, he had heard everything that jerk had said to her. He had been furious and had asked the candidate if she would mind rescheduling. She had been happy to get out of the way. I asked if he had called the entitled person in next on purpose. The boss confirmed this was exactly what he had done. He described how they had sat in silence for a while before he told the entitled person that he had heard every word said to the secretary. Before the man could make excuses, the boss had told him that he needed to hire people he could depend on, which was why he had hired his wife as their secretary. My eyes widened in shock as the boss continued. He had told the entitled person that not only would he never work there, but the boss would be calling the HR departments at other firms in the area to let them know what kind of person he was. When the entitled person had claimed he couldn't do that, the boss had reminded him that his comments weren't made during his actual interview, so there was no protection. Then he had kicked him out. I didn't get the job in the end, but honestly, that experience was worth more than the position. Seeing instant karma delivered to someone so entitled was incredibly satisfying. I've been working at Splash Mountain Water Park for 3 summers now, and last summer I was assigned to the Typhoon Twister, our tallest slide with multiple steep drops and sharp turns. It's honestly pretty intense, which is why we have strict height requirements. You need to be at least 4 feet 8 inches, 56 inches to ride. I've seen kids crying at the top when they realize how high it is, so these rules exist for good reasons. I was about 2 hours into my shift when I spotted trouble. A woman was walking toward the front of the line with her small child in tow. The kid couldn't have been more than 42 inches tall. I immediately knew we'd have an issue, but I kept checking heights and sending people down the slide. 8 or 9 more people went through, and then it was the child's turn. The mom pulled out her phone, ready to capture what she probably thought would be an adorable video. I took a deep breath and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. I told the woman that her child wasn't tall enough for the ride, explaining that riders needed to be at least 56 inches tall to go on this slide. The mom gave me that look, you know the one, where they're already deciding you're just an obstacle to overcome. She dismissed my concern, saying she was sure it would be fine if she accompanied him. I didn't clarify properly and just said it was okay, not realizing she misunderstood me. The parent then told her son to go ahead. I tried to interrupt but only managed to get out half a word before she cut me off with a smug, "Thank you." She smiled at me like she'd just won some kind of battle. That slide has sections where even adults get airborne. If this tiny kid went down, he could easily be thrown from the tube at one of the sharp turns. Someone could die today, and it would be on my watch. I quickly reached for the emergency control panel and shut off the water flow to the slide. Without water, the kid would either get stuck partway down or experience painful friction on the dry surface. Neither great, but both better than being launched out of the slide. The mother's face transformed from smug satisfaction to rage in about 2 seconds. She began screaming that I was going to hurt her child, shrieking so loudly that people waiting in line were backing away. I responded that this was our safety procedure, keeping my voice steady and professional even though my hands were shaking. This was literally in our training. If someone bypasses safety checks, cut the water immediately. The woman demanded to speak with my manager immediately, pointing her finger in my face. I told her I'd be happy to call him. I reached for my radio and told dispatch we had an entitled person situation at Typhoon Twister. Within minutes, my manager arrived. He's this chill guy in his 40s who's seen it all. He brought the rulebook with him. Smart move. He asked what the problem was, and the mother immediately complained that I had shut off the water while her son was on the slide. She claimed he could have been hurt and that it was completely unacceptable. My manager opened the rulebook and explained that, according to our safety protocols, staff are required to shut off water flow if an underheight rider enters the slide, emphasizing it was for her child's safety. The mom wouldn't accept this explanation. She argued that her son rides water slides all the time and accused us of discriminating against him because of his size. My manager patiently explained that these height requirements were set by the slide manufacturer and insurance company, and we couldn't make exceptions. At this point, the woman threatened to call the police, claiming this was child abuse. My manager and I exchanged shocked looks. She actually pulled out her phone and dialed 911, telling them that water park employees were endangering her child. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up. They interviewed me, my manager, and several witnesses from the line. They reviewed our safety protocols and the height requirement signs posted at multiple points in the queue. The officers then told the woman that not only was the water park following proper safety protocols, but filing a false police report was a serious offense. The woman's face went pale. She tried to defend herself, stammering that we were putting her child in danger. The officer corrected her, stating that she was actually the one putting her child in danger by ignoring safety requirements. They told her they would have to take her to the station. They actually handcuffed her and led her away. Her poor kid was crying, and my manager had to call for another employee to take him to the park's office while they contacted his father. Turns out the dad was still in the park enjoying the wave pool, completely unaware of what his wife had been up to. He came to pick up his son looking mortified, then had to drive to the county jail to bail out his wife. The water park pressed charges for the false report and the disruption of service, amounting to about $200 in damages. Plus, she got herself permanently banned from the park. The best part came a week later when she left a 1-star review online claiming she'd been framed and that her child had been abused by staff. My manager printed it out and hung it in our break room. We had a good laugh about it. Every time I think people can't possibly get more entitled, someone proves me wrong. Water polo was my escape during my teenage years. As a goalkeeper from age 13 to 18, I was good enough to play for 2 different teams simultaneously. I loved being the last line of defense despite basically being a living target. The adrenaline rush when blocking a powerful shot is unlike anything else. Parents at these matches could get intense, screaming from the grandstands, their voices echoing across the pool. Normally, they kept their distance from players since we look completely different in the water with our caps on. That's why I was surprised when a woman approached me before one particular match. She asked if I was the goalkeeper for the Blue Sharks. When I confirmed, she explained that her daughter was playing against me today in her first match. I stared at her in confusion, not understanding where she was going with this. When I pressed for more information, she revealed that she wanted me to let the ball through whenever her daughter, number 7, took a shot. I was shocked and asked if she really wanted me to deliberately let her daughter score just because it was her first game. She confirmed this was exactly what she wanted. After an awkward silence, she asked if I would do it. I told her sure, though I had no intention of following through. She walked away, smiling triumphantly, and whispered something to a nervous-looking girl on the opposing team. I told my teammates about this bizarre encounter during our pre-match huddle. Everyone was disgusted, and we quickly devised a plan. In water polo, players can get away with quite a lot underwater as long as they've touched the ball. We decided to use this rule to our advantage. During the match, every time number 7 got the ball, one of my teammates would make sure she got dunked. If she managed to approach the goal, I'd charge at her like a hippopotamus on turbo boost, making myself as intimidating as possible. From the balcony, I could hear the entitled parent yelling about our deal, but I ignored her completely. After the match, a referee asked what the yelling was about and why we targeted one specific player. I explained the situation and he walked away without another word. Later in the canteen, we found the referee confronting the entitled parent. He told her she was banned from all her daughter's matches for the rest of the season for trying to set up the game. When she protested and spotted me in the crowd, she tried to grab me. The referee threatened to call the police if she didn't let go. She finally released me and stormed off, her daughter embarrassingly trailing behind her. 2 months later, I faced the daughter again in my hometown. Surprisingly, she approached me before the game. She told me she was actually grateful for how our team had played against her. It had been a wake-up call that helped her stand up to her mother's controlling behavior. She acknowledged that water polo was meant to be rough, and we both laughed about the situation. We had a fair competitive match. This time, when she scored a legitimate goal against me, the victory was entirely her own, no deals, no setups, just skill and determination. The entitled parent was nowhere to be seen at the rematch. Her daughter had finally put her foot down and told her to stay home.